Yeah. So, hello.
Hello.
To start off with, would you just like to say your name and where you are?
Yeah, here I am Kailash Tuli,
Mm-hmm.
and I am from New Delhi, the capital city of India.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, now I am retired from active job for more than 45 years in the field of psychology, and then maybe about 25 years in the field of Gestalt.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
basically, I have been academician, teaching, research, counseling, and workshops. That has been my area. And from time to time, I have been developing myself. So originally, I am from physics, then psychology, then even counseling and clinical psychology, gestalt psychology. And later on, for last 7, 8 years, I am in the field of management and especially in the field of change management.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So the first question that we have is, who are you as a person, as a human being? And that can speak to your interests, your passions, your qualities, your values. Just who are you as a person?
Uh, that's I am basically a believer in humanistic approach, a regard for each and every human being. In the modern world, we see a lot of problems of various kinds, and I just cannot see the poverty of the people, the poorness, the suffering, their difficulties. But then, as a person, I feel helpless because those things are so big, huge problems, and there are so many kind of vested interest that I see that I am too insignificant to bring any change, which is something like, I would say, negative about me, that I under evaluate myself.
Hmm.
I wish that I could do many more things for the human society. Yes, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
So, does any particular event or circumstance in your life come to mind that has shaped who you are?
I would say so. Uh, my biography, a little bit. I won't go much in detail. My biography is that when I was a child of 3 years, my parents had a kind of very serious problem to shift from Pakistan to India. That is a time in 1947 when this huge country was divided, and I and my family, being Hindu, we shifted from Pakistan to India. That was a highly disturbing event for not my family, but for millions of people in India. I am sure somewhere that trauma might have remained in my mind because as a child, when I grew up in a small village, I found the things were very uncomfortable. There was a lot of painfulness. There was no hygiene, no cleanliness. So many difficulties were there. And I appreciate my parents, like, say, God, that they brought up. We are two brothers, one sister. So it was a huge task. My father was a very devoted school teacher, and later on he got award of President of India, which is a very big honor. So those values affected me because I found that one can become, one can rise to certain levels in life, and especially my father is my mentor from whom I learned various things. My mother also played a big role in my life. And Later on, I could say that I am a self-made person. In my village, I had only education till the age of 12, and then I had to go to a little town nearby. It was real struggle during those days, and it took almost like another 10 or maybe 15 years to get into some swing. So I had an interest in psychology, though I studied physics in my graduation. So from physics to psychology, that was my real passion, and that was totally self-motivated.
Hmm.
Uh, Maybe in the beginning it was Sigmund Freud who fascinated me, and while in the university, being a student of physics, I was studying more of psychology of Sigmund Freud. So I read almost all his work in that library in 1960s. So that had some great impact upon me. So I wanted to pursue a career in psychology. I was in a small town, then I came to this capital city, and from here I am my struggle starts. So I had to support myself. I had a little job also, and along with my job, I studied full-time master degree in psychology from India's one of the very good university, Delhi University. I did well. I got a good position, and it took another 1 or 2 years to become a lecturer. That is like assistant professor. So then 35 years I remained in Delhi University. It's a long time, but during this time I had many other things. I, of course, had done my MA, then I had to do my PhD, but during my service, I did my PhD. And somehow or the other, my this passion of learning more psychology was always widening. So during 95, 96, I got a postdoctoral fellowship in Vienna University. So that was a very big change for me. And it was the city of Freud and his home, and now it's a museum. It was very close to university, and I became a member of that also. So, I had something wish fulfilled, and I could really uh, feel so glad that I am in this city.
Hmm.
That really changed my life. I learned many things. I had good teachers there, very good friends there. It was a totally new exposure for me to see the Europe from a different perspective. Before that, I had traveled to few countries, but it was at my own initiative, or it was some conferences which took me to Europe and USA. My first conference which I attended was in Berlin, and it was the same, you can say, month or date when Germany was also unified.
Well.
So they were unifying, becoming one Germany.
Hmm.
East and West were merging. So that was a lot of, pleasant and very ceremonial atmosphere in that city. And I don't know how I felt that I had to be there at that particular moment.
Hmm.
That's a little emotional thing, but mystical also. So I have some very internal natural love for this Central Europe region. So anyhow, I had my that travels there, and that 1 year was very good and great for me. Uh, then I need to come another aspect that here in teaching I had been doing at the different steps, and then I was getting invitations from other places also, like for just lectures. But it was in Vienna that I learned about Gestalt psychology.
Hmm.
Not that I didn't know Gestalt psychology, I knew it that much, but only like a textbook or a theory. And there they had to do some workshop in it was supposed to be done in India by a German couple from Frankfurt, Willy and Jerry Kogan. So Willy and Jerry Kogan are quite old generation of Gestalt therapists because Willy, because Jerry had been direct student of Fritz Perls. So I was very lucky to have a contact with him. But somehow in that year, 96, I couldn't do that. But next year, they had another program. They used to have every year a residential workshop. So their next residential workshop was in Turkey, and it was at a very nice, beautiful place, Lake Letamos. So there I spent 3 weeks, and we were about 15, 20 participants, and that was my real exposure to Gestalt. So I would say that my turning point, my life change was there. I met many people. I had very good friends there, and I studied about Gestalt, and it was one of the very, I would say, aha experience. So I was so happy, and I wanted to go more into that. So from that time onward, I used to start writing some small articles, and then back home in Delhi, I, in a way, told many people that I can do Gestalt workshop. And in India, by the way, it's totally new. I mean, there is, even now, there is not much of Gestalt here.
Mm-hmm.
So here I started workshops, and they became a very liked. These were very much liked by my students, friends, other colleges, universities. So somehow I became a kind of, you can say, expert in the field of Gestalt psychology. So that is how my journey continued with Gestalt. I love it. It has affected my personality. It has brought some good changes in a way. And I think in a very like in a different enlightened way. But at the same time, can I continue to speak?
That's okay. I mean, I have more questions, but I'm still,
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
listening.
You can.
It's very
Yeah.
interesting what
So,
you're saying.
but you can have the question in between
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah, I was wondering in either other aspects of your life or in Gestalt, is there a particular person who you would say has really influenced you?
yes, uh, I would say uh, Willie and Jerry. They are the first person, and I kept a contact with them. So it was typically case of I thou.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized what's the meaning of I thou. Then I had another co-student there. She was from Germany, Regina, and she also motivated me a lot for
Mm-hmm.
Gestalt. In fact, there were later on some workshops also, and she told me a lot about them. And then I attended another one of Gartla in 2002. So
Mm-hmm.
that is how I was getting more into the field of Gestalt psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sec, I mean, this was first with Willie and Jerry in not Istanbul, but in Turkey. Then second time, they also had another workshop in India that I attended. That was, I think, in 2004 or 5. But in between, I got connected with AAGT.
Mm-hmm.
So this AAGT was very fascinating for me. So I am in a way fortunate to have been there 2 times. First was in uh, Vancouver, that was in 2006, and
Mm-hmm.
then in 2010 in Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here I met another great person, Bud Feder. I have a great regard for him. He is such a simple man. Now, of course, I know he's no more. I had a lot of regular contact with him, but he was a person to whom I could really feel that had he been in a country like India, he would have been something like a Gandhi. I mean, he was such a nice and,
Hmm.
such a noble person. I mean, and I had really closely lived him
Hmm.
because from New York, New Jersey, he took me in his own car to Philadelphia. And even when we were in Vancouver, we were all the time mostly together. So at both the places, I had my presentation and yoga workshop. So we became quite close to each other, and I always had contact with him. I mean, I must share because it's something very important. I mean, they are so considerate that for two times I was given scholarship for AAGT, both the times. It's not an easy thing, and without that, perhaps I would not have been able to do that. Though I have some earning in India, but this money is not that much. But anyhow, I am always grateful to persons like him, and I really learned many things from him. So I would say Jerry Kogan, Bud Feder, and of course I met Rasniks and other people. I have
Hmm.
met almost like maybe 15, 20 important people in Gestalt psychology. So I am so glad that I am into this global scenario
Hmm.
of Gestalt
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, it's interesting. Bud is someone very special to me, and I have just applied to coordinate his scholarship fund next
I
year
know.
in
I
AAGT.
read it. I am so
Yeah,
happy. And
yeah,
I
I
just,
really appreciate that
yeah,
work as well.
I liked it
So,
very much.
yeah, so I'm curious what it is in Gestalt. What do you identify as the aspect that fascinates you, that attracts you to Gestalt?
Yes. It's primarily about being it here and now. In many people, and even in many cultures, or even in many countries, we always talk. I mean, there is nothing bad as well about talking the past, but people go so back into the past that it takes a very difficult task to bring them into the present. I mean, this concept of being in the present is most important. There are thousands of quotations floating on this present, past, future, but then people do the same thing. They don't change it. I mean, they don't talk of the present. They talk, maybe they talk of the present, but they maybe live in future or live in past and all that blame game. This blame game is a very good concept. I am
Hmm.
happy you told me in the beginning. And this is something which is highly negative kind of quality in which people really are very much damaging. In fact, if I look into the Indian family system, or maybe even in many institutions in Indian context, there is huge blame game, which is something very harmful. So if I could, whenever I do counseling, I really am able to make some change in the people to bring them out of that blame game,
Hmm.
so that they should not stick only to the this thing. They should come in present, and they should be more positive, and they should have a humanistic feeling. And some people, I hope, they change.
Hmm.
So to bring the change in people with these basic concepts of Gestalt, that is here and now, being really living in the present, and being like a humanistic approach to be really helpful with the people and to have harmony is very important.
Hmm.
Typically, I look into the family systems also. And sometimes I see that if there is harmony in, say, spouses, so the things would be very much okay for them. Not only for them, but for their children, for the entire family, and maybe even for the entire like neighborhood or community. So there are some very important aspects of that which can be taken into account. I also want to share with you two or three concepts which are, I would say, prominently in my mind.
Hmm.
One is the concept of global gestalt.
Okay.
So it's a little going beyond gestalt because as of now, gestalt therapy is something like individual or maybe small group therapy, like five people, 10 people, like 20 people. But the biggest workshop I attended was this Rasnik and Gatla, and there were, I think, almost 80, 90 people. But of course, they were in different groups. So that was good. But this concept of global gestalt, I want to develop. I have written also one paper on this. That means that we should use gestalt step for that, for bringing harmony in the world. It's a big project. Not that, I mean, in fact, I wrote in that paper all this UNO, WHO, and EU. They are all examples of creating global gestalt. But still, the global gestalt is a very distant goal. So if somehow the big people in Gestalt or maybe the other social, politically powerful people could think that there could be more harmony in the people globally, that would be a great thing. And that is typically to fight with, like, one is, of course, the latest event. In fact, when I wrote my paper, this problem was not there. So, like, but other problems like, malnutrition, hunger, fights, all non-stop killing, racial discrimination, doing some doing some horrific kind of things with certain category of the people. So those are very touching things. And if we are living in, say, something like 21st century, how do we give a rationale for that? I mean, if we have so much of knowledge, and then still the world is really so problematic. One book which influenced me very much was by James Hillman. He is a Jungian therapist, and he is direct student of Jung. Uh, uh, I met him about 25 years before, and it was a residential workshop where he was for about 1 week. And his one book title is very good. We have had 100 years of psychotherapy, and the world is getting worse. And the world is getting worse. This is the title of the book. So it's so funny. But that's a very true book. That's worth reading. That how much things we have done with the help of psychotherapy, behavioral therapy, humanistic, and so many systems, and even psychiatry, yet the problems in the world are increasing. So whatever problems were there in the Freud's time, they are much more multiplied, though he was a beginner in this field. But even then, like some of his prophecies, Freud's, like civilization and its discontent. So these are marvelous kind of works which really guide me. I sometimes feel that I don't need to search other answers. Answers have already been given there. But the problems are those which are remaining. We really are increasing the problems. So there is somewhere something wrong with the delivery of intellectual concepts. We have very big intellectual concepts. We may be having a history of some 20 Nobel Peace Prize. People like Dalai Lama, they teach so much good. But even then, the ultimate fallout is that the things are going bad. That means that people in the world are to be looked after in much better way. If they are not taken care, we can land into a more horrible time.
Mm-hmm.
It could be in any shape. COVID is one, but it's a, again, politics is there in COVID also. But
Mm-hmm.
the problems of human beings are increasing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if our knowledge could really help the people in general, globally, then I would be really feeling proud that, oh, huge knowledge and it is utilized.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So what role do you see for yourself as a person, and what role do you see for Gestalt in those problems? What is global Gestalt for you?
yeah, global gestalt for me is something that intellectuals, especially those who are, you can say, those who can influence the ideologies, like in their countries, in their state, or maybe international bodies, they need to really take some proper actions so that the things go better in the world. I know it's a very high asking kind of task, but still something can be done. Especially, I have some interest like in futurology. I mean, futuristic study, not by this astronomy or not by calculation. This thing. So in a real futurology, so they have very different kinds of pictures. So some of them they give very rosy world, and some of them they have that doom spotted. So this is something which need to be taken care of. Otherwise,
Okay.
this is something I think very seriously, but I am myself. I feel in a way like incompetent to do anything in that. That
It's
doesn't mean
it's a
that.
lot to fix. It's a lot to work on. But at the
Yeah,
same
it's
time, I agree, honestly, that just looking at one person in a
yeah,
therapy situation
yeah.
doesn't fix the larger problems. So,
Conceptually, it's a good idea, but I know in reality it's very difficult.
mhm. So I'm
And
also curious. Okay.
yeah,
No, go
should I
ahead. You
speak?
said, yeah, you had something
Yeah,
else.
yeah. One more. It's related with that.
Hmm.
So far, we are tuned to psychotherapy, and I know some cultures, some places, some people where I would say that psychotherapy is still a kind of luxury. It's quite expensive, or it may not be really that much number of people, even like in my country. So, but what we need is also sociotherapy. So sociotherapy is something like a collective therapy for many people. Maybe it is the formation of a good value system. Many schools have that kind of program. They call it as value education. They are good, they are helpful, but it needs to be put into a more professional way, especially in the school education. If there could be this impact of sociotherapy so that it can reach to the people and especially the young growing children. But wherever there is too much of yawning gap in the societies, so there these problems become more horrible. Uh, in the sociotherapy, I, at least here in my country, I feel the things can really improve much and in a large scale with a big population where we can really tell many people how to behave in a better way. So instead of other education, of course, other education is important, but this social education, civic education, this education for values, that is more important. So that kind of, I don't know, like a change of psyche is required for the purpose of our education. So yeah, this is my another a kind of thought, or but this is something within my own. That's something in my say own range where I can really do something or contribute something or maybe have some workshops about them. So that is something is not a very big thing.
Hmm. And I mean, I'm wondering, for you to have the idea that all of this can happen in the larger world, how would you say that you have been changed as a person by your contact with psychology and psychotherapy and Gestalt? Because I don't think that someone can believe it can work on such a large scale if you haven't
Mhm,
experienced it as a
mhm.
person.
Yeah, personally, I would say that my personal mental life, or maybe in a simple word, mental health, improved a lot. Not simply by studying psychology, but later on meeting good people, then Gestalt psychology, reading even some other areas like Buddhism and maybe old Hindu books and all that. So,
Mhm.
I mean, some of
But
those things,
how did you change? What changed in you in those contacts?
yeah, it's a kind of very nice thing which you are asking. What changed in me is personally my value system changed. So the things which I was thinking that they are the ultimate things in your life. So I found that it is not like that. For happiness, I had at some time this idea that materialism is very important. But later on, I realized that it doesn't matter much. Of course, it should be some minimum, but not to the extent that I should become something a very rich person. I have used one term in one of my paper, and I want to share that. That is called seductive technology. I mean, people talk of destructive technology. That's a very common term these days. But seductive technology is the technology and psychology of greed. That psychology of greed creates a lot of problems. People having millions, millions, billions, I mean, unending amount of money, in which, I mean, they just go on for numbers. They can't eat that much, they can't live that much, they can't enjoy that much. But on the other hand, I mean, it doesn't, even that I can understand. Okay, let the people have that kind of life. But then there are other end of the spectrum, the people which are extremely poor, what you call as who, bottoms below the pyramid, bottom of the pyramid. So that section of the people still, they are not taken care of. Like in once I had this in UNO as a tourist, not as a participant, but there I read about this people like on a dollar a day people. It's a huge population. It's unbelievable. I mean, if we still can't get out of that concept of mind, we are somewhere lagging behind. So, yeah, these are some of the questions which still bother me. But personally, yes, I know that thinking of one man or few people, it can change, it cannot change also. It's a big challenge. Yeah. So it is something great. Yeah.
Mhm. I'm also curious, as maybe this is just my ignorance, I'm not sure, but I imagine that there are some aspects as you traveled to, meet all of these different people in these different workshops. Were there aspects that don't make sense culturally to you in India as a Hindu that people are managing or dealing with in Gestalt? Is there anything that doesn't fit with your culture? Or is there something that you feel that would make a specifically Indian Gestalt?
Okay, fine. Uh, Actually, when I started reading original work of Whitper and saw some of his videos and then also another literature by other Gestalt people, so I realized that there is something. In fact, I published one paper that was about Gestalt therapy, especially. And in India, there is a very famous work. I mean, basically, it's a kind of holy book or something, spiritual kind of book. It's called Bhagavad Gita. So I wrote one paper that many things which I read in Gestalt workshops, I mean, I learned in Gestalt workshops, they are somehow or the other written already in Mahabharata, in Gita, actually. Gita is a part of Mahabharata. So in that holy book, I mean, it's in a way sacred book. I won't say that kind. So it's very, I mean, taken with a very big respect by many Indian people, even irrespective of the religion. So those in those there are also many things which were comparable with Gestalt. But I use the word, it was an academic coincidence. It was an academic miscoincidence that Fritz Perl did not come to India. On the other hand, he had contact with the Buddhist people. So his Buddhist philosophy could enter into Gestalt. But I am sure, had he seen this thing, even that would have been integrated into that. So, yeah, that is something interesting. But yes, Gestalt philosophy is already in a way like built in some Indian religion, Indian societies. People these days, especially even on like the social media, if you, it can be very nice today. If you see 1,000 quotations, out of them, some 100 quotation would be about present, past, future, live in present, and all that. But then in reality, nobody is really doing like that. So yeah, that's something very unique, that we
Yeah,
talk many things, but we don't practice all those things.
that's true.
So yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry if the question was a little odd, but I always wonder when something comes from one culture or is developed in a certain region, the ethics and the philosophy of taking it to another culture and moving into a different area, it makes a lot of assumptions. And I'm sensitive to the negotiation between the cultures. So
yeah,
I'm
you are
interested.
absolutely right, because that concept is given in two terms of sociology, emic and etic. So in emic and etic, basically it is that you are in which culture and where you go. So are you a stranger in the culture, or you are an insider in the culture? So yes, that concept is there. But change capability is very important for the human beings, especially at the social level, because in the modern time, the socio-economic conditions, they are very much different. People all over the world have different, I mean, this pyramid shape is very much, honestly speaking, quite disturbing to me. Yeah, man. That is something which I don't know how long it can survive. It will. There could be some other solution. In fact, in management, there is a good work about by an Indian organization, a very big man. I just forgot his name. So he wrote about that there is a lot of power and consumerism in holes beneath the bottom of pyramid. Means people, those who are living at the bottom of pyramid, they have this kind of ability to bring the whole society up, rather than upside people who won't pick them up. You know, I mean, there is no lift, but there is
a lot of
pull
push
upward. It's like that. Yeah, that is
That's
Prahlad.
interesting.
Our writer is, he's quite famous. He is Indian born, but he was in USA. I think he's no more now. So his work is very famous about pyramid, this social pyramid society.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, what
his
you were
work was
saying
good.
just a moment
Yeah.
ago, it reminds me of another question that I do have when you talked about the insider-outsider experience. The question is whether you feel part of a Gestalt community and what that means to you.
Me as a person,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yes, I feel so much. I still remember. Uh, 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 I am lucky to have a lot of traveling, right? Except Latin America. I have
Maybe
been
that's next.
to, yeah. So except that, I have traveled a lot, and my name, which was given in two workshops, was that I am an international Indian. So because my perspective is different in the sense that world is one. Another concept which also influenced me in this context is Gaia hypothesis. Gaia hypothesis is about that the Mother Earth is a living organism. So in that context, we should treat the Earth as one, not as like 210 countries. I mean, of course, geographically and administratively, all those things are required. But as a concept, the Gaia hypothesis is that Earth is a living being, both in physical form, social form, and climate perspective. So we should not really make any damage with that. And some of the things, still it's unknown how COVID and other kind of things, or even global warming, or maybe in some 10, 20 years, you hear that seawater is coming up. So all those kinds of things are, very unique. So, I mean, they need to be tackled. There has to be some answer, because it's the future is always technically uncertain.
Yes.
Let me use one simple quotation. howsoever knowledgeable I or we may be, there is always an X factor in your or my knowledge, our knowledge.
Ah.
That means that whatever we may know, still there would be some X factor.
Mm-hmm.
So we have maybe now more than 120 years of Nobel Prize, so many researches, so many things and all that. So still the new things are coming. That means that all those things which were there, they were hidden or they were uncovered, undiscovered.
Mm-hmm.
So that way I believe that the world has a future with new wisdom, new technologies, but our basic philosophy of life is also there, but not in practice.
Mm-hmm.
There is a gap. What we think, what we wish, I wish so many things, but even maybe at sometimes, maybe personally, I may be a defaulter. So that kind of psyche is yet to be generated. So where the people could be all into one, kind of level at a certain proper kind of domain
Mm-hmm.
where they could really take care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay. Well, one more question that I do have is either as a person in your own history or within Gestalt, however you would like to answer, what would you say has been one of your greatest moments, one of your moments of most fulfillment, of clarity? I don't know how to describe it, but what would you say has been one of the high points for you?
yes, um, not one, but maybe I could then say two or three. So one moment which I still remember and which was a kind of a lot of overjoy for me is that I am a graduate in physics, but then I did masters in psychology, and to get admission for that was not an easy thing. So my one professor, who later on became my professor, his name is Professor Basu, and he got me in a way admitted into psychology course. For 2 years, I did my master's course in psychology, and at the same time, I was doing a full-time job. So it was a really struggling period for me. And in fact, uh, many people had told that it's very difficult things you are doing and there is no advantage of struggling so much. But anyhow, when the result came, so I had first division and also second or third position in the university. That was a really great joy moment for me. I was really physically thrilled, you can say, which Nardi, I am otherwise a very calm and quiet person. I don't really bump up. But in that situation, I remember. Then, yeah, many other moments, especially, yeah, I had a wish to see Sigmund Freud's home. So when I went to Vienna first time in 90, so I had seen that. And I remember the image in my mind when I came out from his museum. Uh, it was a little raining drizzle, and 2, 3 drops came into my eyes, and they were just like tears.
Mm.
And I knew it's not tears, it's raindrops. But I had a feeling that I should come to this city again.
Mm-hmm.
First time I went there only for 2, 3 days and lived in a youth hostel. But then, just I would say, 6 years later, I get my postdoctoral fellowship there. So that was again another amazing moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
To do postdoctorate in Vienna University was a big, uh, really honor and great learning for me.
Mm-hmm.
My professors, they were very good, very helping, and still I am in touch with them. And then, still now, after my retirement from Delhi, uh, I am a visiting professor there in Austria, but it's not Vienna, some other place where I go for change management.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different field. So I am associated with that university for about 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. That is also a very aha moment for me. But
Hmm.
now, the same thing cannot continue forever.
Right.
For 7 continuous years, I had been going there, but then some health problem, and then now for 2 years, I am really not going out.
Hmm.
So
So that is actually my last question, which is what is next for you? It's very interesting to see everything that's taken you to where you are, but it sounds like you still have a lot of ideas going forward. So what do you see next for you, and what do you think is next for Gestalt? You've talked a bit about that, but
yeah, good. Okay, my that way wish would be to, because I know writing a book would be one thing. Many academicians would always say to write a book. It's so common, and maybe at this stage of my life, I am now 75 plus. So at this age of my life, it may not be very difficult thing for me, because at old age people, I can't do any other mobility. And now all the research work is very easy,
mhm,
especially with internet and other things. But I wish I could really have some good impact upon maybe some few students who could work well. I am happy that one of my uh, Gestalt students, she was not my student, but she just got in contact with me because of her own enthusiasm. And she was, and you know her by the way, she is Kirti.
mhm,
So, and I am so happy to see her. So this gives a great feeling as a good teacher, that here is my one student who is doing very well.
mhm,
So I wish, my one wish is still there. Uh, if I am dynamic and if my health would permit, is to have some institute of Gestalt in India,
mhm,
at least, because it's very much in all parts of the world, even like, even in small countries like our neighboring country, Nepal, they have one institute. I mean, Sri Lanka, I don't know. So, but I mean, Gestalt psychology is so popular, but in India, it has not taken any shape. Here, I tried, to be honest, with one or two institutions, but maybe I am not a good salesman.
mhm.
I couldn't convince them. So, yeah, that is my one wish. And I would really be very, very happy if it could be established. And that will bring a lot of, a kind of equality and equality also, equality and quality of psychotherapy in India.
Hmm.
Because right now we have CBT and psychoanalysis, maybe that's more traditional. Gestalt as such is not here. In fact, many people sometimes ask me that why don't you? So my inability, I would say, is that I don't have that much of resources, energy also in a way. To some extent, I
Mhm,
would say that I am not that dynamic. So that salesman spirit is
mhm.
something which is, I just take it because Gestalt has taught me to understand yourself.
Mhm.
So if
Also,
there is
maybe it
some,
just hasn't been the time. There's field theory. The conditions haven't been right
yes,
yet.
yeah,
But,
yeah, so many
hmm,
kind of things are there.
hmm. Okay.
Yes.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to add right now?
Uh, I wanted to be really thankful to my teachers from psychology and Gestalt, which I have spoken, Billy, Jerry Kogan, and Resniks, and Bud Fider, and so many other. In fact, I had a name list also. I am so happy to be with AAGT, with Jenny, Gatla, and had workshops in Hungary and Ukraine. I have two very good friends. One is Tine. She's from Amsterdam.
Hmm.
She's a very good Gestalt therapist. In fact, before your session, I had a session with her.
Ah.
So, so she is really so dynamic, and I am sure she is more than 85. So I
Hmm.
really love her work and very creative. And yes, I have met many, like one is in Sweden, Sh- Sean, Sean Gaffney and Lars, uh, Lars Berg. He's
Hmm.
actually more like an artist, but a very creative therapist also. So
Mhm.
yeah, I am grateful to many people. And that's again a concept of Gestalt, that it's not one drop, but millions of drops which make
Right,
an ocean.
right.
So I believe in that kind of philosophy.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your time
Thank
and
you.
for meeting with me.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you. I too am so happy and I appreciate your effort. And this concept itself, I am wondering why humans of Gestalt can be like humans of maybe chemistry or maybe physics or maybe architecture. So
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean, and
we'll see.
I must compliment you and your these videos. They are very
Oh, good.
educative. And when I mean, I think many regional country areas where people want to study Gestalt, these things, this would be very good material for that. I
Oh, good.
wish I can be of some more contribution in this. That I shall do also.
Okay. Well,
So
thank
good.
you.
Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me a chance to speak. And I feel very delighted and feeling
Thank you.
inspired now.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you
Thanks.
very much.